to reintroduce you to Glenn Ignazio. He is a retired Major Special Ops Air Force Commander and expert in defense intelligence technology, and he joins me now. Glenn, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Look, I really appreciate your time here today. Look, Glenn, when we spoke just 48 hours ago, we were explaining that the reality was probably something like what has happened. We talked about a possible implosion or it being snagged or something like that. But you explained, and it's such an interesting perspective. I mean, it's so obvious, isn't it, that you must stay in the moment. And you said we must maintain hope. Imagine if we'd all given up, a week ago or however many days ago and just said, oh, look, it's impossible. That doesn't serve anyone. But we have now arrived at the point that we do realise that probably the worst case scenario of an implosion seems to have been the order of the day here. This is what we understand. Can you fill us in on some more details as you know them, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right about maintaining that positiveness. You have to until you absolutely know. I mean, in the special operations world, we always assume that you can do something even though it may feel like it's impossible. But back to exactly what happened. So, trying to understand and explain to people, I've seen a lot of rumors and everything today about, what happened to them and how it occurred. So to give you an idea and try to do the best layman's term as I can, is every inch, so 1 square inch of pressure at that depth, at 13,000 feet, is over 5,800 pounds. So imagine 5,800 pounds sitting on your big toe. Okay, that's how much is on the entire body. When there's so much pressure, there's a fault, some fault they probably will never know, but something happened and it immediately imploded. All of that pressure pushed this thing together. It's almost like squeezing a tin can. And include that pressure, which is instantly compressing. It's an incredible amount of heat. So it happened in less than a quarter of a second. So fortunately, it happened so fast that they don't know what happened. So there was no pain. So the pressure was intense. The heat is intense. So the ability to find remains, I hate to be graphic, but it's just to cut some of these rumors, is probably not going to happen. So that's what occurred. The Navy on Sunday heard what they thought was like a firecracker sound, and they couldn't verify it, didn't really know this was going on, and they reported that to the Coast Guard at the time on Sunday to help them maybe navigate that maybe that was the submarine, but you couldn't really verify it. So that's what pretty much happened to them. That's the conditions they were in, and that's also what the Navy heard on Sunday, but it was just a sound. They had no idea what it was tied to.
Now, just on the idea that back on Sunday there was a sound that may or may not have been able to be addressed at the moment, can I ask you, based on your knowledge, how far away would that instrument have been from where the submarine would have exploded? To explain to our listeners just how effective this particular device would have been to detect this submarine detection, I think that's what it was used for.
Oh yeah, I mean some of these things are really amazing, and there's all types of them. I mean, so. On like naval ships and stuff that are looking for submarines. I mean, when submarines are being searched for, people stay quiet inside because you could hear people talking. There is a lot of people don't know this, but on the other side of Pacific in Japan, with sensors here on the west coast of the United States, there's a blast that goes out, and they actually listen for it across the entire Pacific because that tells them how the speed of sound is traveling through the Pacific water column. It's crazy. So these sensors could have been on a ship. They could have been some of the static sensors that are in the water where they're listening for vessels or listening for seismic activity or listening for submarines. So I don't know exactly which one, but it's amazing how sensitive these things are. And they can triangulate, if you have enough of them, of a rough area. And that's probably what happened. And it's a pretty complex system, and they're very sensitive, but I don't know exactly which one, but that gives you an idea of how much you can hear in the water. It's like a microphone carrying sound for miles.
So this may have occurred as long as 5 days ago. Do you think that there was a reason why they didn't jump to that conclusion at the time? Or again, was this a case of, well, this is possible, but we still have to go through the motions of a traditional attempt at rescue?
Yeah, good question. So, first of all, these types of sounds, things happen like this in the ocean all the time. The Titanic is falling apart. Sometimes things fall and they're heard. So the idea of what was this sound and the timing is a question. It's always going to be open. The thing that's interesting is when they were in that dive, I think we talked about it. It was a 2-hour dive, and it was about an hour and 45 minutes that they lost communication. I mean, you have to think what happened? They lost communication. Are they missing? Are they down in there? That's where the whole search and process has to go through until you absolutely positively know. Just hearing a sound, you have no idea what that could have been. And so the search had to continue to verify what was going on.
So this is the hard part, because the human emotion becomes part of it now, and many of us would place ourselves in the shoes of the victims and the victims' families at this point, and just wonder how it is that they held hope when they may have been deceased as early as Sunday, which seems to be the most likely point at this stage. And just the idea of how you cope with that, and that young boy, that 19-year-old son of the Pakistani businessman, I think his name was Suleiman, and just thinking that what a waste, all these horrible things that you think of at this time. But this is the emotional side of things. But getting back to the business at hand here, what do you think that the industry as a whole, I mean, if we take the adventurers out of it, do you think that this is a major setback for pioneers, adventurers today? Will this change safety? Will this change the rules? Will they in fact have to now regulate such types of adventure in the future, Glenn?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, as far as exploration and the professionals that are out there doing this for a living, I don't think it's going to stop anything. They follow strict rules, regulations all the time, and that exploration has to continue for just the future of mankind. It's just very devout to that. As far as the idea of doing civilian travel for hire, I think it's going to impact things greatly. I think the idea, especially since you have the Coast Guard and others involved now, that there is going to be some kind of certifications imposed. There weren't really anything for this. You had to believe in it. I mean, you have people that climb Mount Everest. You have people that go up into space, as a space tourist, and people want to take those particular risks, but you have to absolutely accept that you may lose your life. And I think these folks did. But I think that it may impact the civilian sort of, tourist type of thing down to something like the Titanic. But I do not. I think it's just going to make the professionals double check to make sure everything's fine. But I don't believe that's going to stop them whatsoever for doing what they feel that they absolutely need to do.
Because today we heard from filmmaker James Cameron, who has been down there many times, and he was very critical of this particular organisation. And one wonders, therefore, if this is part of the scrutiny that's going to take place at this point. Do you think that this was a fundamental error in the Ocean Gate itself? Like, this is not something that we can expect to happen with other submersibles that are currently available?
No, I don't think so. And I'll tell you the reason why is, as I find out more and more about it, and I won't comment until I knew, is, the structure itself, a lot of advanced technology, NASA and so forth. But like I said, it was a sensitive thing. If just something knocked into it as it was on the ship being put in the water, that could have completely, impacted the hull and caused problems. But when you're talking about other submersibles, there's submersibles that go down in the Antarctic and other areas, and they don't go as deep as 13,000 feet. Like I said, even our nuclear subs go only about 1,500, 2,000. That depth is absolutely tremendous. So with the regular submersibles, there's things that are out there for tourism. I don't think that they're in an unsafe environment because they're not dealing with such drastic, incredibly powerful forces like you would be 13,000 feet down.
My last question, Glenn. Given we talked about adventures, etc., and your knowledge and skill set in your retired military career, there, do you think, because there's a lot of talk today, and it's the typical thing that people say, "Oh, look, it's too dangerous. We're obsessed with safety, etc." With your skill set and your knowledge, would you ever take on such an experience? Perhaps not maybe a submersible or space flight. Is that something that you would do as a civilian, or do you think it's just a no-go zone, just from your own perspective?
I think from my perspective, so the whole submarine thing that deep, man, that would creep me out. I'm sorry, I'm an air guy. I like flying, but I would be looking at say like the space tourism. I would really want to be seeing something that has been proven technology over a period of time. And just for myself, I want to make sure that it's validated that, it works, but things do happen. So I know taking that risk, I could lose my life, but I would love to take a shot into space like some of these space tourists have and have that experience. I would love to do that. And pushing yourself and trying to do this is what makes us all better. It does. And so you can't stop from this situation. It's, failing forward. You have to pick up, learn from it, and press forward. Completely hearts out to the entire family and so forth. But like I said, is learning from the failures so that it doesn't happen again. So like I said, fail forward. That's what you have to do to maintain that forward growth,
Yeah, look, I totally concur with what you're saying. It's kind of like when your child falls off a bike. Yeah, first thing you have to do is get back on. Whilst it's a lot more expanded here, a lot more detail, but it makes a whole lot of sense. We
Yeah.
can't stop being pioneers or adventurers for the sake of what we need to do as humans and exploring not just our planet, but effectively one day off planet. Glenn Ignazio, I really appreciate your time again today. Thank you very much for appearing on Compass.
Absolutely awesome being with you. Thanks, Jason, and I appreciate your time, man.